Well, hello and welcome to the Smells Like Money podcast. Join me, Suzanne Chin Taylor, the DooDoo Diva, as I interview guests who are making an impact on how we manage and operate systems for conveying and treating wastewater. As a veteran of the wastewater, trenchless, and civil infrastructure industry, each week I'll be bringing you industry know-how from industry pros who know how. Join me each week as I speak with representatives of organizations that are utilizing disruptive or new technologies and methods, and executives who are excited to share how to be successful and sustainable in our vital industry. So whether you want to learn about the latest trends in technology, in treatment or trenchless, gain tips on training and retaining great talent, or simply how to be more efficient, productive, or profitable, this podcast is for you. Ready? Let's dive right in. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the DooDoo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. I have the great pleasure of bringing you today Mr. Jeff Lemay, who is the treatment plant supervisor at the South Windsor Water Pollution Control Department in South Windsor, Connecticut. So welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here.
Well, Jeff and I got to meet each other when I interviewed him for a feature article that we were going to be developing to be published in Treatment Plant Operator magazine. And through the course of that conversation, Jeff was just such a wealth of knowledge, but also we got to discuss some really important things as it comes to management and dealing with people in a municipal environment, which is something that we don't get much opportunity to talk about here on the show. And so I asked him if he would be gracious enough to come on the podcast and so that we could have a conversation about some of the things that he shared, because I truly believe that a lot of the principles that we talked about during the article interview not only apply to municipal entities, but really any organization, because it's just about the bottom line of leadership and how to be a good leader, no matter what type of organization you're in. And so I want to open the conversation today we talked about the importance of how do you get the most from your team? And so that it winds up being a really positive work environment, that you don't have high turnover. And we all know that we're facing labor shortages. It's really hard to find good people. It's really hard to keep good people. And so, Jeff, one of the things that you brought about was the importance of being a human being, not being a human doing. And I subscribe to that because sometimes I have a tendency to be too busy just doing, and empowering through trust. So share with our audience what you meant by that first principle of empowering through trust.
So I think that part of it is that at our core, even when we're at work, right, we are still human beings. We don't just leave that at the door when we come in and punch in, right? So, I mean, I have an open door policy here in my office, and it's easy to say, leave your problems at the door. It doesn't belong here at work. You know, when you're at work, you can't be thinking about external things. That's all, you know, it's fine to say, but that's not a realistic thing. We all have things that happen outside in our personal lives that color all of our day to day, whether it's at work or at home or in social settings or whatever the case is. So my door is always open. My employees know that if they have something going on, they are welcome to come in and talk to me about it. And sometimes they will get into some personal things, let's say, and sometimes they don't, but they might just say something simple as, you know, I have some things going on at home. And part of being that human being versus human doing, I'm a talker. We've spoken about this before, right? I have a lot to say. So sometimes I need to remind myself that as much as there are things that I want to say, it's just as important, if not more important, that I listen. So in being a human being and not a human doing, being present in the moment with them, engaging with them, not talking with them about things that are going on with them while I'm doing other things, It only needs to be a couple-minute conversation. It doesn't need to take up a massive portion of your day. But when you're actually engaging with them and they can see that, you care and that you kind of understand where they're coming from and what they might be going through and why they might be a little distracted today or, not quite have the same energy as they normally do, they recognize that you recognize that. And I think when they leave, just knowing that somebody kind of understands, I think that they feel a little bit better. You see a little bit more pep in their step, even if they've got something going on. And I do think, I guess selfishly, the reality is that I do care about everybody here, right? But if I was being purely selfish, I can see a change in that person's motivation and that what they accomplish the rest of the day. It does make a positive. It does make a positive difference in their day. So they are just more productive. So I think, just showing them that you care. And I kind of treat things here, maybe to my own peril sometimes. I think some people maybe think it's a little funny sometimes or that I'm a little bit too much of an optimist. But we spend at least 40 hours a week with each other. And if there's emergencies, bad weather events, or, any other thing that might bring us in outside of normal hours, even more than that. So like it or not, I consider us to be somewhat of a family. And I think that by treating it somewhat in that way, I think people want to go get after it for you.
I would agree. One of the things that, I did a little seminar on this a long time ago, and it was about what do you think the number one drain on your bottom line is in your organization? And it often gets overlooked. And the answer is insecurity. And you think about that for a moment, it's almost a primal emotion that we all suffer from it. We can think we're all confident, and we can be confident, but at our core base, we all experience insecurity about something. And you as a manager have to deal with that, whether it's coming from, they're afraid that, their child is sick or their wife is going to leave them or, the house is going to get foreclosed or, what's coming that, God, I really don't know how to do that task. And he's going to ask me how to do that at the plant. And it's all about insecurity. And so as a manager, I just want to kind of just segue into how do you deal with situations like that where you sense, it seems like you've got a really good handle on it, that where is this coming from? I think that this could be coming from maybe just basic insecurity, and how do you shift that?
That's a great point. Because if you're feeling insecure, your brain doesn't have space to be creative. Your brain doesn't have space to be, you don't have room to be a problem solver if you've got knots in your stomach over, it could be anything. It could be something as simple as, they're going through something and they're outwardly displaying some sort of emotion, whether it's subtle or maybe not so subtle. I just think being recognized, recognizing that their concerns are legitimate is the first step there. To just making them feel a little bit more secure and going, they could take a deep breath. Okay, he understands me. He knows that this is like a real thing. He knows that this is something that could be affecting me here. And I'll just bring it back to something that, you and I have spoken about before. We're very lucky here in South Windsor. The team that I have here, they're very smart. They're very smart with our wastewater process. They're also very smart mechanically. And even if there are problems that they haven't come across before, their process is such that they are able to, working as a team or sometimes individually or sometimes with me assisting, come up with solutions to problems. That doesn't mean that solution that they came up with is always going to work out perfectly. In fact, a lot of times it's not going to right off the bat. Doesn't mean it was a bad idea or a bad solution. But when you're fleshing these things out, it doesn't always go smooth. So we've run into situations here where somebody's taken the initiative to solve a problem, to come across something they never have before, and to methodically work their way through it. And it hasn't quite worked out. And maybe that means somebody gets called in after hours an alarm goes off that they weren't expecting, and on-call personnel have to come in and deal with that. Or you come in the next day and there's a puddle of oil on the floor. Something didn't quite go back together right. And my people here take that kind of stuff really seriously. You can see it on their face that they're disappointed in themselves, and they think they're worried I'm going to be disappointed in them. And I've had people come in and sit down, and they're apologizing, and it cost us extra money. And I'm just like, look, I'm never going to browbeat anybody over looking at a challenge face on, coming up with a solution, feeling the confidence in their own skills to go ahead and do that. And if it doesn't work out, sometimes it doesn't work out. But ultimately, you do end up solving the problem. You have more knowledge of that issue for the next time. And you continue to have people that are motivated to come up with those solutions. How many guys would have to come in my office to have me chastise them over something not going perfectly as planned before they all just decide, you know what? It's not in my job description to come up with those solutions. It's not in my job description to be forward thinking and to go into my boss's office and explain things that I see could be a problem in the future or anything like that. So it's not in their job descriptions to do that. They do that because we have a good relationship and because they care about what they're doing, and because I'm going to say but it's not just me. It's the bosses that came before me too. There's always been this culture here of listening to what other people have to say and understanding that they may have better ideas than you do. In fact, many times they do. And we want to keep that culture going because that's what helps make this plant special. That's what gives the town of South Windsor this, to me, what it is, a very special department and a department that really cares about what they're doing.
That kind of leads me into when you said something during our interview, was that it is important to peek behind the mask that someone wears.
Yes, for sure. So on that note, I mean, everybody, there's people's true personalities, right? And most people don't really let anybody ever see the whole of themselves, right? But there's the general personalities that's actually what that person is, and then there's what that person is trying to appear to be. And there are certainly folks down here at times that they've got a tough mentality, and it's not that they're not tough. If you've been working in this industry or any industry where you're really working with your hands and you're getting dirty and you're getting grimy, and wastewater can be gross. We all know it can be gross, and you've been turning wrenches for 30 years. I mean, that takes toughness. 100% it does, right? But sometimes they want to appear a little tough, but at times you can see that sometimes those are actually the people that are the most sensitive. They're actually the ones that need a boost every now and then. They're the ones that need you to call them in every now and then and say, hey, you don't quite seem right. Why don't you sit down? Do you want to talk for a minute? Is there something going on? You don't have to tell me exactly what that is, but you don't have to be going through it alone either. And the reality is, I think even, and maybe I'm saying too much, but I feel like this is true more so of our aging workforce. The guys that are a little bit older, the people that are coming up closer to retirement, that's a whole psychological thing in and of itself. I know, my father's generation, for example, their whole persona is so tied into, having been a worker for the last 35 to 40 years, that sometimes as they see that drawing to a close, they're actually really scared about what they are and who they are without being a worker, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes those are the guys that they have the toughest outward facade, but they're actually the ones that could kind of use a little, maybe TLC is the wrong word, but they could use somebody to talk to them to remind them that, that they're more than that, and that they're still valuable, and they've got lots of knowledge, and they still know how to do things, and that they're still physically capable. And a pat on the back. They pretend that they don't need a pat on the back, or they don't want acknowledgement when they accomplish something. And they may scoff at a little bit when you send an email out to everybody saying, hey, this job was accomplished and these are the folks that took part in it. And I really want to reach out and say thank you for the extra effort. They may scoff at that stuff, but inside, I think it makes them feel validated. It makes them feel like they're still useful, which they very much are. And again, it leaves them just feeling good. If you're feeling good and you're feeling comfortable, you can go to work and you can do a great job. If you are feeling junky inside and you're feeling as though you're worthless and you're feeling as though, let's say, your time's coming to a close and in terms of your work life and stuff like that, and you just got those knots in your stomach over whatever anxiety it might be, you can't bring your best effort. You just can't. Your mind is not there.
That's so true. I like what you said. TLC is a good thing. It's just about recognizing. Just recognizing that we all go through phases. So one of the things that we also talked about that I wanted you to touch on as a manager is that it is important, and I really want you to share this because I love this that you brought this up, that it's important to figure out, I'm reading from our notes, the strengths and the weaknesses of your staff. Because without managing this way and funneling them in the correct directions, as a manager, you're actually creating more work for yourself. And I'd like you to explain to the audience what you meant by that when you shared that.
Absolutely. Again, everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. I have a guy on our staff that was a licensed plumber for many years. So any kind of pipe fitting, any kind of HVAC work, I mean, naturally, we're going to funnel that stuff towards him because he's very strong at it. He's meticulous, a true perfectionist, and the work shows it, right? So in throwing him those jobs and giving him those things that he's confident in, it's just sort of reaffirming to him his value here. And as I'm doing that, I can look at some of my other crew members and say, hey, I can either actually ask and say, is there anybody else, that wants to learn a little bit more about this? Or kind of naturally through your day-to-day with people over time, you can see people that have more of an interest in these things. And then those are the ones that I will assign with him as workers because they are the ones that are going to very closely follow what he's doing. And then maybe someday if he's not there and we have a job that needs to get done that requires some skill and expertise in plumbing or HVAC, they can take some ownership over that. If I have somebody that's not engaged in that type of work, I don't want to say it's useless to have them on the job. Sometimes you just need an extra set of hands, but it doesn't mean as much as it does with somebody that's actually trying to learn this skill. And that could be for any variety of reasons. It could be because they want to be a better plumber so that when they're at home, that they know better what they're doing at their own house. It doesn't really matter. They're learning, they're engaging, they're figuring something else out. And it's little wins. It's a win for you at work. I can think of a guy that ran into a situation recently where it felt like over the course of a couple of weeks, there were multiple jobs that were just kind of beating him up, a little bit hard to figure out. You think you're going to get it done in 4 hours and you don't. You think you're going to have it done by the end of the day and it's not. You think you've put it all together, you're going to flip the switch and everything's going to turn on and it doesn't. That kind of stuff can wear on you. And even when they come in and say, hey, look, I'm sorry and this is what happened, this is where I'm at, I can say, hey, that's all right. We're going through a process. We have redundant equipment. We're not in an emergency situation right now. Let's keep working our way through this. Those losses add up to people that care, right? So if you don't give them some wins every now and then, what you can get, whether you like it or not, is an employee that's a little dejected. So again, it's just setting them up for success. You can have people that are strong in some cases and weak in some others. I mean, ultimately, I do still need everybody to have some cross training in a little bit of everything, because you can't always have your strong people in each individual discipline. They're not always there. So, everybody needs to know a lot about a little. But I just think it just goes back to that whole mental attitude of feeling like you can get the job done. And in terms of my work life, I am a wastewater guy, yes, But a couple other folks in our industry have reminded me multiple times, you're also managing a utility, right? So a lot of my job is not directly involved with wastewater. It's involved with maintaining, this facility and this infrastructure, not just here at the plant. We have 11 pump stations. We have 130 miles of sewer line. And it takes a lot of people, vendors, engineers, other managers here in town, upper town management, our own staff here. It takes a lot of people to keep that thing going. I can't learn everything about everything. So when my HVAC guy or my guy that knows more about electricity than I do, or my guy that's a construction guy, or my lab analyst, she's been doing lab work for the last, outside of here, even probably 25, 30 years, let's say, they're experts. They're living this day to day. Who am I to pretend that I know better than they do? What I need to know is enough about what they're doing to make informed decisions. What do we need to purchase? What direction do I want to go with here on this? But if I'm making those decisions without them, I'm creating a lot of extra work for myself, and I'm actually putting our department in the town of South Windsor in a very poor position to be successful and to be forward thinking and manage these assets that we have here.
That's a great answer. The last thing that I wanted to talk about and wrap up with is you as a manager, something that I thought this was great, that it's a difficult situation and maybe you don't handle it as well as you could, and you accept the accountability, and you don't, as a manager, you just don't let it go and hope that it'll just the bad feeling will dissipate. And I'd like you to share how, when you do something, when something like that happens, how you handle it, because I just thought it was, grace under fire.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just about reminding them that you are a person too. And I think when you and I spoke about it, I actually talked about it in the same way that I deal with my own kids. Certainly not that these guys here are my kids, but right. It can be a very similar situation. I think it's important that when you make a mistake, they're not stupid. They can see that I've made the mistake, right?
Right.
So I'm lucky enough that if I do make a mistake, somebody on my staff will point it out to me, right? They don't just talk about it amongst themselves. Jeff messed this up. Can you believe it? Sometimes something happens and I screw something up and I may not even realize immediately that's happened. Somebody will point it out. And then usually, if it's a big enough deal, I'll call a meeting, the same day. I don't like things hanging out there, right? I make mistakes. It's important. It's important for them to know that you're acknowledging those mistakes and that you mess up too. You don't want to come off like you're perfect. I don't want to come off like I'm better than them. I am not better than them. I cannot accomplish, there's nothing here that I can accomplish without this staff and us all pulling in the same direction. Not one thing can I accomplish without them. So what good does it do for them to think that I see myself as better than them or more important or a bigger piece to the puzzle? It doesn't. So it's acknowledging, hey, I made a mistake. This is how I'm going to go about correcting it. And we're going to move forward from here. And if anybody wants to have any further discussion on it or has any concerns, we can discuss it here in this meeting. Or if you're more comfortable coming into my office later or shooting me a text or an email, we can talk about it in that way. But this didn't go the way that I planned. We had an unanticipated result, and this is on me. You guys didn't do anything wrong. This is on me, and my bad, right? And I do the same thing with my kids. Sometimes, maybe you get on them over something. It's like, hey, why are you doing that? I asked you to do this. Well, mom asked me an hour ago to take care of this, right? And then you confirm, and it's like, geez, I was getting on them. I yelled at them for no reason. They were just doing what mom wanted. You know what I mean? And it's important for them. It's important for them to hear you say, hey, that was my mistake, and I'm sorry. It's important for them to see mom and dad as human beings, also grown up human beings, but no different, right? They're little human beings, but human beings all the same. And it's important for everybody to understand that, you're not perfect. And I don't know. And I hope I'm being long-winded, I think, here.
No, it's great. You're speaking from the heart, and I love it.
I appreciate it. But I hope what you'll take from this, and what I hope, the audience would take from it, is that this is sincere. I mean, it's not just these are steps to being a good manager. And again, I'm certainly not perfect, but it's being sincere and honest. And that comes across. They will see it if you're being fake, right? So the best thing is just to honestly just try to be a human being you're trying to make the best decisions. You're trying to engage your staff as with them as human beings and people, and not just part of this machine. And I do truly care about all of them. I've been working here in the town for 9 years now, and with most of them, I've been here that entire time. I think they're all really good people. I think they all have a lot of value, and they have a lot to offer the town and a lot to offer themselves. And I want them to see themselves as such. And if it doesn't come from the heart, and if it is insincere, they're going to see right through it, and you've lost them. And as soon as you lost them, that's it. Game's over. They're not going to. There's a reason why when we run into emergency situations, before I even get a chance to answer the call, before I even sometimes see that something's wrong, that some alarm has come through our SCADA system, or we've had a power outage somewhere, or something's going on, I've got 4 people in my office, and they're already organizing a response. And now they're just looking to me to pull the trigger on that response. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because they care, and it happens because whether they always agree with me or disagree with me, they know that I care about them, and they're ready to go. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens because we have a culture here.
Jeff, that's a perfect way to end this episode. And I want to thank you so much for sharing, your pearls of wisdom with the audience. And I hope that everybody that tuned in today, or will at another time, will get something out of this and take, maybe a few plays from Jeff's very good playbook for, running an excellent plant. I mean, they're an award-winning plant. He's an award winner himself. And so again, like you said, that doesn't happen overnight. It all is a direct result of developing a really strong workplace culture. And, it sounds kind of trite, but there is no I in team. Right. So on that note, again, thank you for being on the show, Jeff. And thank you for joining us here on this week's episode of the DooDoo Diva Smells Like Money podcast. And so until next time, keep it flowing.
Thanks so much for joining me, the DooDoo Diva, on this week's episode of Smells Like Money. What stood out to you this week? Share your takeaways by leaving me a review. You can find out more about the new technologies, creating sustainable solutions, and insights on how to succeed in our vital industry by subscribing to the show. Whether you want to learn about the latest trends in wastewater infrastructure, treatment, or trenchless, you've got it all right here at Smells Like Money. If you're an industry expert and would like to be considered as a guest for the show, book a quick chat with me by visiting calendly.com/the2it group/B-A-podcast-guest, or simply click the link in the show notes below. Until next week, a big shout out to all my industry friends and those who will be. You are my superheroes. Thanks for tuning in, keeping it flowing, and we'll see you all next week.